Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman Rock and Roll. In the last part, we took out some more Robot Masters. In this part, we do more of the same. Mega Man games are kind of repetitive like that, because there's only so many times you can say, we took out these Robot Masters in the stages. It's the same stuff over and over again in structure, it's just the unique gimmicks and stages are a bit different each time. Speaking of which, it's time for Reactor Man, whose stage was probably my least favorite when I first played because his gimmick is force beams, a la Quick Man stage. If you see a giant blue beam of any kind throughout the stage, barring the one this thing is shooting out, it's more than likely instant kill, so don't touch anything. Thankfully, whenever the beams are being blocked like this, obviously when they're fully blocked, they're not going to damage you, but I don't think their hitbox extends like per the pixel that it's being blocked by. I think there's a little bit of a barrier so you can like hang your toe over the edge and not get hit. We're also going to have to deal with some minor timing puzzles where you need to shoot some switches, to turn off some lasers, and then go from there. Also, this particular E-Tank, there are two ways to get. You could either use Polar Woman's weapon and charge it up to have it bounce a certain way, which is how I got it my first playthrough. But I'm going to try and save some ammunition for this weapon since it's, Reactor Man's weakness at all. We're actually back on the weakness chain at this point. But you can also use Dunewoman's weapon when we eventually get to that point to take that out. Now, this particular mini-boss is shooting out these giant blue energy balls. And the big gimmick with this stage, beyond the beams themselves, is that anything that is blue, if it touches one of the telebombs, they become shocked and head immediately for the location you were at when they got shocked. They are invincible, they are just hazards at that point, which is probably one of the most interesting uses of telebombs I've ever seen, because usually they're just the farming fodder. Them actually being used as the active hazard is really cool. There is also one other fold to all this, these disco balls. That was bad timing. As you can see, the disco balls act as reflectors for the instant kill force beam, so if you're in that field of circle whenever it happens, you're dead. And hey, that's a side path there. If you've checked out the math, you could probably figure it out by now, given that there's only 3 Robot Masters left and 2 friends we've yet to rescue. It's time for the next one, and anyone who watched my Super Fighting Robot LP can tell this is Daggerman's section, which even has the teleporting mystery data diamonds. There was a bug with this area earlier on in development, but for now, let's get on to Daggerman himself. He is weak to Woman's weapon, which is one of the reasons I broke weakness chain earlier. Daggerman, like in Super Fighting Robot, loves to teleport all over the place. He'll do a 1-2 slash need to jump over. He can charge into you with his dagger head, or he'll do several charges like that from the teleports in the sky, shooting down a sword that will then split left and right. He can also just shoot out his dagger, but he seldom does that, so it's not really a notable attack. He's a really fun pattern boss, but with his weakness, as you can see, he goes down pretty quickly. Now, a bug that was apparently, I forget if this was in this game or Super Fighting Robot, actually, now that I think about it. I think it's this game. There was a minor bug where, in the case you touched one of the Daggerman teleport diamonds, and a spike at the same time on the same frame, you would die. But they eventually updated the game, to the point where if that happened, you would the game would take it in your favor and you would no longer be killed. Also, just hold right there and jump. You won't get hit by that laser at all. That's just more meant to spook you than anything. And since I am low on health, I'm actually going to take this rare telebomb opportunity, with this kind of platforming setup, to grind for some life energy. Because let's be real, that's what telebombs have always been useful for. And now they're going to start being shocked off the bat. We're almost to Reactor Man, though, and when we defeat Reactor Man, we're actually going to be set back onto the weakness chain because his weapon is strong against Woman. So from here on out, we're going to be finally back to business. That brief distraction to fight Woman's worth in the long run, but it can be a bit disorienting to someone who likes to go weakness chain all the time. He's weak to Polar Woman's weapon, so get that out. Reactor Man as a boss is a pretty quick fight. His energy laser is his main attack, which he charges up very quickly whenever he points his buster out. You can tell he's about to fire just based off the little meter on his buster, but the timing is pretty strict. He also has 2 attacks where he deals with the sky. He'll either teleport right above you and then do a shockwave attack, or he'll float up in the air and generate some laser beams off the ceiling that will try to follow you. He also really hurts. If you use Polar Woman's weapon though, especially at full charge, you freeze him and that will lock him sort of into a stun lock. He'll do 1 of 2 attacks immediately after he gets freed from that. Either the teleport into the shockwave or the floating attack. So you can generally predict what he's going to do, but there's still that 50-50 chance, generally. He's one of the harder bosses without his weakness, though still very doable. But definitely with his weakness is the way to fight him, because he's definitely not a first choice. And for beating him, we get his very weapon that he was using against us, which is the charge laser? You don't charge it like a charge beam, though. You just hold it out as a constant hitbox. It can pierce through enemies, hits multiple times, and it can even charge certain generator-type objects that we've seen throughout the stages. I think at this point, the next 2 stages don't have any of those, but in the case you take things out in a certain order, that could be useful. And since we've taken out 6 Robot Masters, we also get our final mobility upgrade, Rush Jet. You access this by pressing the triangle button twice as Megaman so you can differentiate between Rush Coil and Jet. It works like it did in Mega Man 4 onwards, you just slowly move forwards. I don't think you can do the jump trick, I've actually never tested it, because honestly, I seldom use Rush Jet. Roll is just a better option for mobility anyway throughout the main 8 stages, and endgame, we'll talk about that when we get there. With that, now it's time for Beetle Lady, and I love the start of this stage because any reference to Mega Man 6 makes me happy. Good luck, Plant Man. Have fun frolicking through the forest. Though, it's interesting to see him here because this stage is very reminiscent of his own, at least in terms of looks, obviously. Despite being the jungle stage, this stage deals a lot with water and enemy gimmicks rather than straight up environmental gimmicks. For instance, now we got these brown caterpillars that if you let them be on screen for too long, they will actually hatch into a beautiful butterfly. And that butterfly is surprisingly fast and hard to hit. We also got these, I'm trying to remember the name of the beetle here in English. I think rhinoceros beetle. My brain immediately goes to Kabuto, but that's because I'm a Metabots and Kamen Rider fan. They are sort of a platform. You can jump on top of them as soon as they move, and you want to be quick here to get to this C, because otherwise you're not getting the letter for this stage. Also, don't be like me on my first playthrough and certain other LPs I've seen in this game. Use whatever mobility upgrade you have to get up to this ladder, because it blends way too much into the environment there, because it's time for us to get our final friend. If you can't tell by the aesthetics, we're going after Honeywoman. I do like that a lot of fan projects have really picked up with Honeywoman, though, compared to Hornet Man, because I really do like Honeywoman's design. I know the comics referenced her slightly by having a similar character called Vesper Woman, but there are notable aesthetic differences if I recall correctly. But it's time for her herself, and like Hornet Man in Mega Man 9, she is weak to the fire weapon, Dragon Breath. God, it's weird hearing the Mega Man 9 boss theme. And the fight is, I think, largely identical to the original fight, barring the fact Honeywoman will shoot out some honey, and if you get stuck on it, she'll try to ground pound onto you with her stinger. If you use her weakness, though, she goes down pretty quickly. It does a pretty good chunk of damage on her. This is probably one of the shorter friend sequences, too, barring Skullman stage. I've actually never seen what the portion of stage between this is. I forget if I've even mentioned this. In the case you beat a friend's portion of the stage, be it Fireman, Honeywoman, Skullman, or Daggerman, if you go back to that portion of the stage later, either via revisiting the stages when looking for rock and roll letters that you may have missed, or getting a game over, you actually can't take that route anymore. It's completely blocked off, so you have to go through the sometimes easier, sometimes harder platforming sequence. I've only ever had to do the Ghost Woman portion off the top of my head. I don't think... Oh, wait, no, I've definitely done the Drakeman portion. I just don't remember much about it. Have not done the Reactor Man section. And I definitely haven't done the Beetle Lady version, yeah. This is probably the most perilous portion of the stage, especially if you're playing as Megaman, because the amount of bottomless pit here and the admittedly small platforms can make knockback kind of annoying if you get hit here. I recommend playing as Roll for this stage, especially due to that. I know some playthrough I've seen of this game did this interesting enough playstyle, I suppose, where they played as Roll for the female Robot Master stages and Megaman for the male Robot Master stages. And that's definitely a way to play the game, and it can definitely at least allow you to get some variance in your main 8 stages. I just don't care to because I like Roll better. Also, there was a blast missile thing up there. Missile thing I forgot to blow up. I think that just drops down an extra life. Beetle Lady is weak to the Soul Trap, she'll get it out, but she's not weak to the Soul Trap itself. She's gonna summon some beetle enemies, and you need to attack those with Soul Trap so you can trap them and have her fly into them. Her main pattern is that between beetles, she's going to be flying left to right, dropping water droplets to sprout and blow away some dandelion flowers. The dandelions themselves are very hard to dodge. I know there is a way to dodge them consistently. I just am often too panicked to figure it out. She's a simple boss, but just the dandelion fuzz alone is surprisingly hard to dodge, making her not an ideal first choice, but a simple enough one. And we get a pretty decent weapon for beating her. We get Beetle Drone. You can summon up to, I believe, 2 of these at a time, and they're sort of like options from Gradius in that they'll float around you. If they spot an enemy, they'll generally go over to them and start shooting them out, or they'll just do huge contact damage. They are very useful. With that, there's only one Robot Master left to go. Let's head after Dunewoman. This is probably my favorite stage color palette in the game. I just like purple and yellow. It's just a thing with me. There is one thing that I really don't like about this stage in general, though, and that is these trees. Some of them will drop these sort of Nitro Man wheel-looking enemies out of them. I think they're actually from the Game Gear games, now that I think about it. And you can see them if you look at the very top of them, of the trees, rather. I'm just usually too focused on my playable character to ever see them. So that kind of sucks. Either way, Dunewoman stage, first off, here's the rock and roll letter very early on in the stage. As you can tell by the aesthetics, the main gimmick here is going to be various types of sand, particularly quicksand, which does as you'd think, and these sand blocks. The moment you stand on them, they disintegrate, or the moment you shoot them as well, so you just need to platform around them wisely. Thankfully, the timing for both the quicksand and the sand blocks is generous enough that if you hesitate a moment and plan out your route ahead of time, you will generally be in good shape. Now, if you hesitate on top of the sand blocks, you're gonna be in trouble. There's just no other way to say that. We also got these Hercules beetle, I think is what they're called. Again, my Metabots and Common Writers trying to speak more than my actual, like, remember some things about insects guy. Because I kind of like beetles. They're cool. Actually, no, I think those may have also been a different type of rhinoceros beetle. Because aren't Hercules beetles stag beetles? Or I'm not an insectologist. I'm going to stop now before I make myself probably look stupider than I already am. Which, easy enough to do, I suppose, if my friends know me well enough. I love this background. Partially for the color palette, and just, I like big cityscapes like this in backgrounds. I always have. Now, something I find interesting about this game is that it does the bird drops an egg type of enemy twice in different ways. One of them, the egg itself, is the weapon. It'll drop it behind you, and then it'll rocket towards you. I believe we saw that in Missile Man stage. But in this stage, we have the more traditional type of bird egg enemy, where it'll drop it and then it'll sprout into several baby birds. I think that was first done in Mega Man 2, from my memory? My greed is showing for me. I need that extra life. I am getting the extra lives for a reason, though. First off, your save file does save the amount of extra lives you have. And for the end game stages, you really want to have as many lives as possible. Not that game overs are a big threat because they save what stage you're at and all. It's more so the lack of having to replay through a stage. and inflates the recording time that I don't want to do. Either way, it's time for Dunewoman herself. She's weak to the Beetle drone, so get that out. Her pattern is a bit weird. She throws blobs of sand at you twice, which is a standard projectile, but then she'll slide and jump all over the place. She'll generate a clone to try and distract you for which one is the real one. The big threat is that sand ability there, which, I'll be real, I'm not sure how to dodge consistently. I think you want to go to the opposite side of the stage and slide, because it does fade after, I want to say, about half the stage. But it's just oddly... I've had trouble dodging it, and I've never figured out how to properly get around it. I think it's what I want to get across here. And for beating Dunewoman, we're going to get that very text you use at the end, Desert Storm. It's the closest thing to a screen nuke the game has. You send this desert forward, it can destroy enemies or completely get rid of projectiles that are on screen. It's okay. I only really ever use it against Missile Man, though. And since we got all 4 of the rock letters, we get Megaman's upgrade, a better charge buster. You can now charge it up to a 3rd level, and this does 3 damage like the charge buster tends to do in the mainline games. The charge time takes a bit longer, but for normal enemies at least, it's useful. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4, we're starting off the trek towards endgame. Let's see where we go from here, shall we? See you guys then.